I'd consider myself to be pretty strong. I'm no bodybuilder, but I can put up a little bit of weight. I can hip thrust over 300 pounds. I can deadlift 2 plates. I can shoulder press 50s. We're not going to talk about my bench press, though, because we're still working on that one. I've also grown a community over on Instagram of about 14,000 people. Again, nothing crazy, but it's something I'm proud of. My following is made up of mostly young women who also want to become the strongest versions of themselves. But I haven't always been this strong. I also spent 3 years battling anorexia, 1 month hospitalized for it, and now over 5 years in recovery. But for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to tell you about how all these little things interconnect. Hi, my name is Nicki, and I'm a senior here at Syracuse studying broadcast journalism, and I also make health and fitness content on the internet. While standing here today, I love exercise. My relationship with it has always been rather complex. Before becoming a teenager, I never saw the correlation between exercise and weight loss. Fitness at the time meant playing with my friends, running up and down the basketball court, and biking to the park. But once I turned 14, I started to understand that exercise could be about more than that. Even though my poor relationship with fitness didn't start until I was a teenager, I've had a poor relationship with myself since I was a little girl, something I fear far too many of us women can relate to. I remember sitting in my room and picking apart my body, comparing myself to the other 7-year-old girls in my class. You see, beauty standards are described as the individual physical qualifications that women are expected to meet. Yet even as a child, I felt their pressures. We're naive to think that young girls don't see the same messaging we target towards grown adults and think it applies to them too. From the time we can read, we see magazine covers and ads about weight loss, how to lose 15 pounds in 1 month, and less than 200-calorie meals. We see which types of bodies are celebrated and which ones are ridiculed. Our perception of beauty starts to form at the same time we form our sense of identity, and they become deeply interlaced within one another. So, like many of us, I began exercising in order to get a better body. But exercise no longer looked like biking to the park with my friends. It meant running for hours on the treadmill, secret home workouts, and adding in cardio at every given chance. A better body to me at the time was just a smaller body, a body that would go unnoticed. But chasing thinness always came with caveats. It had neither gratification nor an end game. There was always room to be even smaller. But the smaller I got, the unhappier I got, the sicker I got. It started innocently, just a desire to find happiness. But when you put your entire self-worth into what you look like, I'll tell you now, you're never going to find it. I was an 8th grader, that awkward year before heading into high school, and just desperately searching for a sense of self, just trying to figure out who the hell I was, which I thought relied solely on my appearance. I just wanted to be skinnier, and told myself by losing just a couple of pounds, I would finally be happy. But as I'm sure you could guess, that's not exactly how my story goes. At first, I did what I called a cleanse, a word that now makes my skin crawl. This pretty much meant I would cut out all foods I deemed bad, even though I had no perception of nutrition or the fact that there were no bad foods. But nonetheless, I cut out processed sugars, lost a couple pounds, realized it was working, and then cut out another food group, carbs, and then another, dairy, and then another, until there weren't many other food groups to cut out. So then I created more rules. Don't eat more than 500 calories a day. No snacking in between meals. Don't eat unless you're starving. Until I had so many rules that living in a world where food was at the center felt like living in my own personal hell. As I'm sure many of you guessed, within a few short months, I had developed anorexia. I was barely eating, working out whenever possible, walking around with my hood up, depressed, sick, with only one thing on my mind: thinness. My parents didn't believe in having a scale in the house, so even though my clothes were getting baggier and my cheeks were getting hollower, I just kept telling myself, just a few more pounds, just a few more pounds. While everyone around me could see that I clearly had a problem, I was so mentally gone, I was able to convince myself that I didn't look any different, I wasn't losing weight, and that I didn't even have an eating disorder. But in reality, I would lie in bed each night tallying up the number of calories I'd eaten that day, crying if I felt they exceeded the limit I set for myself, living in constant fear of gaining weight, because I'd been taught to believe that weight gain was the worst thing that could happen to me as a young woman. You see, the scariest thing, but as I laid in bed each night, I would feel my heartbeat thud, a slow, deep pressure pounding in my chest, but I paid it no attention. The scariest thing about eating disorders is that your body, it takes just as much of a physical toll on your body as it does your mental health. They deteriorate simultaneously. And so every day I was battling anxiety, depression, body dysmorphia, you name it, my body was also desperately fighting to stay alive. Within a few short months, 9 to be exact, I'd actually lost around 40 pounds, and my body had begun to shut down. My parents grew more and more nervous as they watched their once bubbly, full of life daughter start to wither away. Being thin always came at a cost. But in February of 2014, things finally came to a crashing halt. My mom decided to take me to the doctor against my wishes to make sure my body was okay. She already knew my mind wasn't. But as my doctor took my heart rate, it's almost as if hers stopped. She said, "Let me try again, something can't be right." But as she put the stethoscope back to my chest, it only confirmed her fears. While I didn't believe my eating disorder, as they were calling it, was real, turns out that pounding in my chest every night was. From there, she sent for EKG, but now, once again, her and my mother's fears were confirmed. I was dying. From there, I was sent to Seattle Children's Hospital, where I stayed bedridden for a month. They told me I had one of the lowest living heart rates they'd ever seen, a mere 32 beats per minute. That's nearly half of what the average resting heart rate should have been for a girl my age. They said my whole body had started to shut down, and if I hadn't gone to the hospital that day, I probably wouldn't have made it to the end of the week. Being thin almost cost me my life. Yet even as I sat there with eating disorder patient labeled on all my meals and paperwork, I still denied that I had one. You see, that's the power your brain, or your ED brain, has on you. You become addicted to the control. But it's an addiction you can't seem to get away from. You see, your biggest addiction, your biggest fear, is the very thing needed to keep you alive. I wish I could tell you that once I left the hospital, I was able to immediately repair my relationship with food and exercise, but that wasn't the case. I resisted recovery. I didn't want to be better. I just wanted to be thin. I had almost died from my eating disorder, yet in my mind, the worst thing they could take away from me wasn't my life, but my thinness. For years, I correlated my desire to work out with my desire to change my body. Fitness was simply a tool, or more so a weapon, I used against myself as punishment. For weighing too much, for eating too much, and for simply existing outside beauty standards I tried so hard to force myself into. But after a few years of teetering the line of recovery and relapse, I finally found the thing that clicked. I found the Holy Grail. I found the thing that finally, after nearly a decade of searching, allowed me to see my body as powerful, that allowed me to see my body as capable, and allowed me to finally come to terms with the fact that maybe, just maybe, thinness wasn't the only way to find happiness. I found weightlifting. Weightlifting saved my life, and that sounds dramatic, but it's true. I was 17 and at a crossroads. I was either going to repair my relationship with food and exercise and recover, or fall back into my old habits of restriction and abuse. Looking back, had I chosen the latter, I'm not sure I would be here to speak today. When I first started to take weight training seriously, I felt so discouraged after not seeing progress as quickly as I wanted to. I knew I was putting in the work, but where were the results? So I did the scariest thing I could possibly do. I decided to eat more. For my entire teenage life, progress was always correlated to eating as little as possible. The less I ate, the more I lost. But this was the first time I realized that maybe it was the exact opposite. If I wanted to build muscle, I had to fuel my body. So I did. And I gained muscle, but I gained a lot more than that. Something clicked, and I realized that maybe food wasn't the enemy. I've always been a competitor, but it showed up in different ways throughout my life. From the first time I was enrolled in sports camp at 5, I knew I loved competition, or in more honest terms, I knew I loved winning. But as I got older, it stopped looking like me versus them and more like me versus me. How far can I run today? How little can I eat? How many more pounds can I lose? Always outdoing myself. Nowadays, I still compete with myself, but just a few more pounds means something entirely different. I love seeing how strong I am, seeing how capable my body truly is, seeing just how many more pounds I can add on to that barbell. And people with eating disorders are oftentimes like me. They're competitors. They're type A. They put more pressure on themselves than anyone else around them. And that's why the weight room can be a place for them to still compete, but do it in a way that empowers them, rather than makes them feel inadequate. You see, the issue is that women and girls are never properly introduced to the gym. And so by the time we go, we're there because we want to change our bodies, because we hate our bodies, not because we want to appreciate them. As women, we are constantly told that our worth lies in our appearance. And with the ever-changing beauty standards of today, we are constantly chasing an unobtainable happiness. They tell us to be thin but have a big butt, be full-figured but without an ounce of fat on our stomach, have a big chest but skinny arms. But what they don't tell us is that beauty is not the highest form of achievement we should strive for as human beings. For years, I denied my body of food, of rest, and of the ability to grow. But strength training has taught me how to actually embrace those things. It's taught me how to become more in tune with my body, how to listen to it. When I need a day off, I take it. When I'm hungry, I eat. It's brought me back to those feelings I had originally about exercise when I was a little kid, before I ever correlated it to weight loss. I do it because it's fun, because I genuinely enjoy it. When we start to realize our purpose in life is not to shrink, the world opens up for us. Ever since I started weight training, I've watched and felt my confidence grow, not just in my body, but in who I am as a person. I know I'm strong. And not just because I can lift heavy shit, but because I know my worth lies far beyond my physical body, because I've almost died from an eating disorder, yet stand here today, and because I will never again value thinness over my happiness. There's so many things we'll do in life as women that people will try to discredit us for, or that they'll try to downplay or question. But in weightlifting, you can find solace in that every increase in weight, every added rep, and in turn, every shred of confidence gained is entirely yours. It's an accumulation of your hard work, your strength, and your perseverance, and no one can take that away from you. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but you can't build muscle if it doesn't burn a little. And the same goes for your soul. Fast forward to today, and I'm able to share my experiences with young women just like me on social media, whether they're in the thick of their eating disorders, in recovery, or just looking to get into the weight room. About a year ago, I got a DM from a woman who worked at Seattle Children's Hospital, the same place I was nearly 8 years ago. She said she worked in the eating disorder unit, the same place my own recovery journey started. She said one of her patients had found my page and that they all sat down and talked about what I was doing during one of their group therapy sessions. She said I inspired them. When I read her message, I broke down, a mixture of gratitude for how far I've come, yet sadness for those still facing the battle. But I would tell those girls this: recovery is real. There is another side. The weight will get easier to carry, and one day you'll be able to lift it off your shoulders for good. Thank you.